So
I think it's a good start.
So I said I conducted research into the relationship between food and dietary control and the subsequent effects on climate change, as opposed to, okay, how are we going to mitigate climate change by, changing our diet? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I did a lot of research on specifically what foods
Mm-hmm.
contribute to producing greenhouse gases
Mm-hmm.
into the atmosphere that would affect a larger problem of climate change.
Mm-hmm. I'm just reading through my intro really quick.
I think it's also important to point out, just like as an intro kind of thing, that if meat consumption is actually projected to grow and keep becoming a larger thing, and if it continues at the rate that it's projected to, the Earth is not going to be sustainable for life. Like, I forget how many years in the future, but decent amount of years in the future.
It's getting closer and closer to like the irreparable damage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's start off, and we'll do the hook, and then we can like segue into those things, right?
Yeah.
All right. Whenever you guys are ready, you think like now? Just jump, because I can just
I
cut
feel
out
like
the
we've
beginning.
already I think he just wants us to discuss,
Let's just cut out everything we
do you
did.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
doesn't want us to feel awkward. I think it's just it should kind of just flow,
Yeah. All right. So I guess today we're gonna talk about diet control, the food that we consume, specifically between animal-based products and plant-based products, and how my research showed that animal-based products kind of it promoted negative climate change in various ways. And is that kind of what you guys got to?
Yeah, that's pretty online with what I have.
Okay.
I also saw a lot of diet change being necessary in certain parts of the world as opposed to other parts of the world.
Mhm.
So not everywhere, but definitely in more Western culture countries.
Mm-hmm.
You saw it being more prevalent in Western countries as opposed to others?
Because
Okay.
more rich cultures, they eat more meat than poor cultures, and poor cultures, they need meat to gain weight and to survive.
Exactly.
So whereas in the US and the UN, meat is a staple and something that rich people are meat.
Yeah. And it sounds like we put animals into a factory-based system, so it makes it even easier and cheaper to get fast food that's chicken-based or a burger or something like that. So fast food's cheap, but doesn't really help our case.
Yeah. Going back to what you said too, we have to make sure we compare what we're saying with Western, a Western view compared to the countries that don't have as much money to start a super specific plant-based diet.
What's interesting is a lot of the animal, the raising of livestock and things like that for animal products, it's not even happening mostly in the U.S. We have them shipped in from other countries that have large agricultural properties and things like that. So the damage is being done around the world, even though it's not happening. It's not originating from domestic, I guess, space.
Those were the Amazon fires, weren't there? They
Yeah.
lit the Amazon on fire
Yeah.
to raise animals for people to eat.
Grazing, I think livestock, raising livestock and grazing pastures is where I saw the most damage being done. I was surprised because it sounds when you need, it's 30 acres to 1 cow. That's the ratio, which is crazy.
Yeah, well, I saw the statistic where 26% of the world's ice-free land is taken up by cows.
Mm-hmm. I think we saw the same. We had the same
Yeah,
resource.
that's crazy.
Because when they have to clear out all the space for grazing, you're that's affecting the climate in terms of less trees and
Exactly.
photosynthesis and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But also when cows digest, or any animals lamb, I think it was goats, cows, and that was the most harmful. Those are 2 harmful animals. But when they're digesting, they release methane,
Yeah.
which is really bad.
And then also when the meat's produced, the amount of water they use to clean the meat and stuff. I watched a video on it a couple years ago, but it's insane.
Supersize me?
No, I don't know what it was, but it was
I have the numbers.
yeah, the amount of water.
So
That
it's 25 kilograms of grain and 15,000 liters of water
That's insane.
for 1
Yeah.
pound of beef.
Yeah. Oh, another thing is I realized why the tariffs are affecting us so badly. So people for that I guess between China and the U.S. we were partners for a very long time, even in the food production industry, right? They targeted our crop that would affect our business the most, and meat producing is a big business. Soybeans specifically is what they put the tariff on. And our animals, like cows and everything like that, they consume like silos of soybeans. And so one research article I read was like redirecting our consumption of meat to consumption of beans, and that would apparently like mitigate our the risk of negative climate change by like over 70%, which is
Yeah.
crazy. But
I saw the same statistic. People who went like strictly vegan actually reduced their carbon footprint by 70% as well. But I also read a research article that says that the carbon emissions, like methane from meat, largely depended on where it comes from. Like meat from Paraguay actually releases 17 more times of methane than beef from Denmark.
interesting. I wonder if it's the way the animals are raised, or if it's
I
like
think it's what they're fed.
Yeah, exactly.
interesting. Huh, huh. Do we ever find out like which animals are the most harmful? As it sounds like
Beef.
beef. Yeah, beef
yeah,
is across the
totally.
board.
Yeah,
I think it was beef and lamb were the worst.
Right.
cattle, sheep, and goats.
Yeah,
I guess are
beef,
the main
lamb.
animals behind
Yeah.
greenhouse gas.
A lot of this, the initiative to mitigate climate change and focus on it, I think, from what I've read, starts from Obama, and like in 2009 he made like a pledge to reduce emissions, and there's like a bunch of initiatives now that are taking place in the last 2 years to kind of really like advocate for it. One was in logistics and transportation, it's called IMS 2020. In food industries and FDA, it's like all around raising animals and minimizing pesticides, things like that. But
Yeah.
their goal in 2009 was set for 2020, and they're getting started on a lot of this stuff in the past 2 years. So they're not going to reach their goal, which is unfortunate. But I don't know if there's anything we can do at this point.
So actually, since you bring up 2020, by 2020, I found the statistics. Meat consumption is supposed to increase by 75%,
Good.
as well as dairy consumption going up by 65%, which
Yeah,
means more cows.
that's crazy.
Agricultural emissions will grow to take up all of the world's carbon budget by 2050, leaving no space for other sources of emissions if meat cuts are not made, which like includes cars and all that stuff.
Wow.
So you can eat meat or you can drive, is what I'm getting from this.
What makes this like so counterproductive? It's like a cycle, right? Like nature is like it operates on a cyclic basis. If we let the climate like deteriorate, like the control over climate deteriorate, it's going to affect the crops that we can actually like consume in the future. It affects like the way we grow crops and like the yields and things like that.
Exactly.
And so,
Yeah.
that's like unless we do something about it now, it sounds and like shift to a plant-based diet. It sounds like we might not be able to do that comfortably in the future without like huge limitations.
Yeah.
Another thing that I see when I was researching is that if we cut back on livestock farming, we can actually feed more people using less land, because more people will eat grain as opposed to cows consuming like I don't remember how much grain, but all that grain, it can go straight to people, which people are eating more, being fed more for cheaper, and we can probably repair the land at this point.
I'm curious to discuss with you guys like how do you think like meat and dairy industries have let things get to this point, right, without any controls? Because they've been doing this for decades. They're like huge conglomerates like Tyson and things like that. Why do you guys think like we haven't had any restrictions on them?
Money. They're
Yeah.
making money. They get powerful. They have power. They can pay the taxes,
Exactly.
and they can keep it going.
I think there's politics involved too. I think there's like lobbying power.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just like gun control is a whole other issue, but like in the food production industry, I feel like big conglomerates can definitely lobby for politicians to support them. At least take attention away from like how severe the implications are. So.
Yeah, and like I got this statistic that only 1.4% of Americans have actually adopted a vegan diet, so it doesn't seem like it's a super popular attraction to people in general. And I don't know if that's just a mixture of contributing factors or what it would be. What do you guys think? Like why aren't more people adopting a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet?
I'd be interested to see what that stat was like 5 years ago, because personally I feel like there's so much more awareness around this now. I feel like more
Exactly.
people are vegans now, right?
Probably.
But it's still not even close to where it needs to be, or we should be, for
Yeah.
us to have positive change.
Yeah.
I actually saw a lot, you guys probably saw it too, about a diet they're calling flexitarian,
Flexible.
which is something I do. I don't eat beef or pork, but I eat chicken and more like greens than that. But looking at that alone kind of cuts greenhouse emissions by 56%. So I think it's a good place to start if you're not willing to jump into being completely vegan or
Yeah.
completely vegetarian.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys do any research about like the negative effects of like processed meat or like meat consumption in general, like beef?
The negative effects of consumption, I mean, other than the climate effect, right, that's
Yeah.
like a big one, that's kind of the focus of our research, but I mean, we obviously know that there's like negative health effects to that too.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty obvious that plant-based diets are healthier for you, but like meat, like apparently significant, it's harder to process beef.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not meant to process it in more than like a percentage of our overall diet, but we like double that threshold. So, yeah, it's not really helping us. I think there's like a link, there's a correlation, I guess not causation, but like between beef and cancer. Which,
Yeah.
I think there's one between beef and heart attacks as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
And I saw like an article that said like just a basic increase in veggies and fruit servings like for each individual person across the world would be like a reduction of global mortality by 10%. Just with like a tiny
Wow.
increase of veggies and fruit
That's crazy.
in people's diets.
What do you guys think? What are some things that we could be doing? I guess moving forward to make it easier to stray away from like a largely meat-based diet and more to plant. Like, how can we advocate for it and help people become aware?
Do you think a possible like tax
A tax
could ever
on meat?
work? Yeah,
People have done it before. I mean, taxes are
from
effective.
alcohol or
Yeah.
tobacco
Yeah.
or something.
That's, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that would be a really hard thing to actually get like passed.
That's a political thing.
Yeah, but
Depending on how many. I
I
feel
guess
like
state by state too would
Yeah.
be different as well.
I feel like it's more important to talk about like the effects that livestock farming is having on the world.
Yeah.
So more people understand that, because I didn't know a lot of the statistics before we started researching it.
Yeah.
I feel like if more people knew about those and kind of knew about the projections and where we're headed, they might consider cutting back at least. And also, I know you mentioned 5 years ago. I see between about 5 years ago, there was a 19% decline in beef consumptions
That's good.
within America
Wow.
itself.
Some people, I know, like, I did this one piece of research that, like, kind of blew my mind. Some people have just accepted that we're never going to go to this diet, this plant-based diet. And so, I mean, in healthcare, there is a concept of preventative medicine and then treatment medicine, right? In this, if we treat this as like an epidemic, like a condition, they're treating the symptoms by starting to grow crops that mitigate, like I guess they store carbon dioxide, they store methane,
Yeah.
as opposed to letting it release into the atmosphere. And so they're growing crops to help like reduce it.
Yeah.
And animals can even consume some of these seeds. Like there's this one seed called Kernza, and there's a farmer growing it in like Minnesota River Valley, and it's a repository for carbon dioxide, which I didn't even know existed. But it's helping reduce emissions from greenhouse gases, and animals can eat it too. So it's interesting. There's different takes on it.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a good solution to try if we try to implement maybe feeding more animals that instead of grain. So it'll cut down on methane.
Yeah. I mean, I want to say like growing like a first step would be like raising them organically, right? Like grass fed, as opposed to soybean fed and like with large pastures and all that. But I'm hearing that it doesn't even make that much of a difference. Like grass fed, like organic meats, like it's still beef, and like the percentage, the decrease in percentage of impact is still like negligent. So that's unfortunate, but.
Yeah.
I think taxes is definitely a concept. I think maybe like if we talked a little bit more about like alternatives to beef and made people more aware of like the health implications, that could be a direction for it.
Isn't there like a new like plant-based like burger or something?
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah.
Impossible Burger or something. I don't know how long
Yeah.
that's been out,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I think they IPO'd recently and like they've been doing well, but it's super overpriced.
okay.
Because
Do you know how much it?
Okay, so does that affect prices of
Prices.
these foods?
Definitely.
Like if they're too
Yeah.
expensive, like people aren't gonna buy them.
Yeah. I mean, that's what taxes do essentially, right? But like the healthier foods are even more expensive than the
Exactly, that's
unhealthy.
what I'm
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Have you guys heard of like alternatives to like I guess just pure meat, like traditional meat, like similar to like the Impossible Burger. That's like a an alternative, right? It's still a burger, so people get that
Yeah.
experience, but it's not made of meat. So
They're actually in scientific labs. I think that the Impossible Burger is actually one of them. They're engineering beef proteins, but like synthetically. So you're still getting like a burger that's not meat, but it tastes and it is the same consistency as
Yeah.
meat, which sounds kind of weird, but I think that that's also a good solution if we can get the prices reduced and make more people try them, or like just make them a more viable solution.
producing meat in the lab.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. I actually read something on that too. It's like happening in like I think it's happening in the U.S. It's a guy. His name's like Vladimir Mironov, and it's called in vitro, right? Preparing anything in a lab, in a petri dish, basically.
Yeah.
And I guess when we think about how detrimental it is to raising the animals and the digestion process and the methane release, maybe this might be like something we could see happening in the future, when like all the moral and ethical codes have been kind of like washed.
Yeah.
Because it's still kind of weird. I wouldn't want to eat an animal that was made in the lab. I wouldn't. But,
That's
Yeah,
kind of
I feel like that's the problem.
Yeah.
it might be one of those solutions where it's more like the less you know,
The
the
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to
Pretty
be,
much,
like,
I don't
not
need to
be
know all the
shady,
details.
but
Yeah, no, that's completely it.
It's gonna lead to huge lawsuits.
I
Pretty
mean,
much.
it'll be on the box in like small print. Not everyone reads the box.
Yeah, true, that's very true.
Oh, I thought it was interesting. So I read an article that was talking mostly about statistics,
Yeah.
and it said that if every American cut meat out of their diet for 1 day a week for an entire year, it would be the equivalent of taking 1.6 million cars off the road.
That's insane. I saw something similar to that. That's crazy though. It's like you don't expect the impact to be that much, but it's like
Yeah, I feel like if people knew the statistic, they would be more inclined to change their diet, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't really read things anymore, they don't really care, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to like just take meat out of your diet for like some like common meals that you have too.
Yeah, or even like partially.
Yeah.
Just any type of reduction. Yeah, you don't, I feel like people think you have to go from like one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, if you just partially, like it says replace beef and lamb with other meat or something like that is like a 20% reduction in like food related emissions. So,
what's kind of sad is it's not even the meat that we're growing or like the meat that we're consuming that's adding to this problem, like negative climate change, right? It's the food that we don't eat either. I don't know if any of you did like kind of stumbled across research on wasted food
I saw that.
and their emissions maybe, because apparently we like don't eat 40 on average, right, across the U.S. 44% or something of our diet is wasted because we just throw it out. And if we're consuming like a huge fraction of meat and we're just not eating it, I guess the meat that we don't consume actually is more detrimental than the meat that we do consume. So.
yeah, 'cause it says here Americans end up throwing out roughly 20% of the food they buy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so all the energy it took to produce that food was wasted.
Yeah.
You guys should work in a restaurant. It's actually disgusting.
I don't know,
Right.
I've worked in a
Food gets thrown
restaurant,
away.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is really disturbing actually.
I mean, they could donate it, but like that, there's like so many like regulations. It's so
Yeah,
regulated.
but imagine so like you have like a little kid who like wants a bowl of pasta. I've actually like
No.
experienced this, and they take like one bite and then you have to throw it away because they've eaten off of the plate. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So
When you're working in food, or when you're like in general.
just in
In
general.
general, yeah, that's fine. Because I know when we want to like, I used to work at Starbucks and we used to donate all of our food to like a pantry or something. But it's because all of it was packaged. But then here in
Okay.
Saxby's, now I work at Saxby's, and they prepare all of their food, all of it.
Okay.
And so at the end of the day, they still have like a huge
A ton of
surplus,
food,
but they just
Exactly.
trash it.
Yeah.
And so the like environmental impact is so, I feel like corporations, right, have like an obligation, not even just households, I feel like corporations have like an obligation to be more sustainable, environmentally
Yeah.
sustainable.
Yeah.
But it's more of a recent shift, so we haven't seen changes yet, but.
Yeah, that's crazy if you think about all the restaurants that prepare food like that instead of just making it as people order it or whatever. Like
Yeah.
that's crazy how much stuff probably gets thrown away.
And we used to work like weddings and parties and stuff, and we'd have like buffets set out, and at the end of the night, just everything trash.
Yeah.
That's horrible. I don't even like think of that, you know?
Yeah, and there's like various components to this. Like I'm thinking like in our discussion we talked about like raising animals, then consuming animals, how we can shift our diet to like a plant-based diet, and then at the very end, if we can't do any of this, at least minimizing waste, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
I wish this was more of like a talked about discussion because there are ways to address it, but I don't think enough people like take it seriously. When you hear vegan, there's kind of like a stigma.
There's a, I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, exactly.
I feel like we didn't really learn about it like that much in school either. Even like in like environmental
Yeah.
science classes and stuff, I just had like one teacher like play like a I feel like it's just not talked about enough.
I don't know where you guys are from, but I'm from Maryland, and actually environmental science isn't part of the curriculum at all, so like they don't touch on any of this.
Oh, yeah, it has to be approved from the Board of Ed, yeah, like from a state
Oh,
level.
really?
Yeah, NJ just approved it when I was like in school, and I remember that being like a shift. And like that was the same year that, like you guys took FinLit maybe, financial literacy at some point? No? They approved the both of those at the same time, but I was like, I didn't really care much for it in like middle school,
Yeah.
right? But now it's like, holy shit, I was like proactive,
Yeah.
but.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Kind of moving away from the waste thing though, I feel like a big problem with people kind of shifting their diets to more plant-based is that they feel that they get all their proteins from meats, and they're not as educated on beans and nuts as like other sources of protein.
That's so true.
People just don't realize, yeah. So I guess another way for us to like, an earlier question that we were asking is like, how do we mitigate, how do we like promote that change, right, into plant-based diets? Just education, I think, early, or like in schools.
Yeah,
Right.
like even in middle school, start
Mhm.
teaching kids the proper ways to eat and
Yeah.
the impacts of what they eat.
Do you remember like the food pyramid
Yeah.
from school?
I do remember
Did
that.
you guys know that they changed it to a plate?
I did.
I think
I
I
think
heard
I
that.
did
haven't
know that,
seen, like,
yeah,
the
I think I've
website.
seen it.
They minimized the meat, dairy, and just took sugar out altogether. So sugar
Really?
doesn't even exist in the food pyramid. It's not like a plate. But
Wow.
I just remember that now. I was like, holy, like that's crazy. I mean, they're making changes. It's like people don't realize because like when we were in school, we were like, oh yeah, part of our diet can be like sweets and stuff like that. But apparently now they've understood that like it's not, doesn't even fit. Like we shouldn't even have it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they changed, it says healthy eating plate has a big portion is vegetables, a smaller portion is fruit. There's a decent sized portion of whole grains, and then healthy protein. Did it used to say just meat? The original one?
There's so many
I think
meats.
so.
Because
Yeah.
now, because I did not think I
Just
remember
meat.
it saying healthy protein.
Definitely not. Yeah,
Yeah.
Healthy protein, I assume, is like chicken, eggs.
Yeah, and then it says water and healthy oils. Yeah, it did not say that originally.
You know what? I'm thinking about this now. I was like, I'm a science major, right? So I'm thinking a lot about like how this is innate, like evolutionary. Like
Yeah.
we think about, oh my god, this is a whole other conversation. But like, sorry, I'm like geeking out here. But if people think vegan, right, there's a stigma, right?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering why is there a stigma, right? And I have thoughts, but I'm curious, like, what do you guys think? Like, why do you think there's a stigma on a vegan-based diet?
I feel like the only vegans that get attention from the media are the ones that are crazy. So like they're going around and they're going to animal rights events and they're like branding themselves like cattle. So I feel like that's a lot of where the stigma comes from, the media.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's pretty intense.
That's what I would say too, honestly.
So you think it's like what we've seen on TV? That's kind of
Yeah. I think the way it's like portrayed to have like a vegan diet
personally
is negative.
I think it's also tied to the like, I mean, maybe this is just me thinking this, but like people who want to get skinny, this and like maybe anorexic, like they want to be anorexic. I don't know, like that. I feel like that's kind of more with the girls. Like I don't know if you guys think that way, but sometimes like I get that vibe, and I don't know if that's part of it or.
That's interesting because like girls and guys have very different like I guess perceptions of what like a healthy diet and body image looks like. Right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
That definitely contributes to it. Yeah. So you're saying like girls want to be like they want to be slimmer.
Yeah.
And I personally, this is what I've seen. So I don't know if you have a different perspective. I feel like guys want to be more bulkier or lean as opposed to like just straight up thin. So they eat like there's like bulking season, right? And like you just eat protein, like mass amounts of protein. And you'll hear like 100% whey being like a good thing, which is just like the worst kind of protein for you, right? It's just like concentrated like beef protein.
Yeah.
Which is crazy stuff. But yeah. and I mean, there's exceptions, but I feel like for guys, they want to eat more of like the carbs and the proteins and the unhealthy stuff to get bigger, and girls want to eat less.
Yeah,
But I think
that's completely it, I think.
Yeah.
and neither are healthy.
No, they're not. That's what I mean. I think they develop an unhealthy diet more than they just want to develop a plant-based diet.
Right.
Mhm.
What I think, honestly, and going back to the healthier thing, like why I think there's such a stigma and like there's a perceptive thing, like if you go back to like cavemen, right, and they were hunting animals, like the reason that like we crave like butter and meat so much is because we get so little of it in our diet. We have to like fight for. Like prehistorically, we had to fight for it, right?
Yeah.
There'd be a little bit of like natural fats in meat, and like that sodium that you get in meat, and like iron and things like that. But now we have so much access to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we haven't evolved fast enough in 10,000 years that like we don't crave that stuff, right? So when it's readily available and cheap, and at least cheaper than the healthier stuff, there's been like a huge paradigm shift in like what we want now. We don't just want, like, we're not just taking like a moderation of meat and like mostly vegetables. Now we're taking, it's like flipped.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Mind blown.
I read that like years ago. I was like, oh my god, that changes everything.
Yeah,
But,
that's crazy.
So what do you guys think the future is gonna look like if we don't make any changes at all, and we just this like you said, like we just keep eating more meat and nothing changes?
I think it's gonna be really hot.
Yeah.
Really
that-
hot.
Yeah. Exactly.
Have you guys like, did you read anything on exactly how hot it's become? I think there's like a pretty popular statistic out there.
No, I did not.
I didn't. I saw that this was one of the hottest years within the last like however many years.
Yeah.
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 Have you guys noticed that too, just like since you were a kid and now like the weather and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's just like crazy.
It
Yeah.
was
Like,
80
even today,
degrees
it's
on
like-
the first
No, I
day.
know it's
Almost
so
70 degrees
bipolar.
today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've read so many different things on like how the weather like that we're experiencing is related to the actual climate. Like people like will say like, oh, in the winter they'll be like, oh, like they'll like the other side of the discussion, the end of the argument will be like, oh, why would you say climate change is real if or global warming is real if we've had the worst winter yet? But I feel like it's that bipolar like nature.
Yeah,
of
I
the,
think it is.
I don't want to say bipolar, maybe like
Yeah.
unreliable
Yeah.
control of the weather.
Yeah.
I read that it was like 1.5 something like degrees Celsius, which is a lot. That's
Yeah.
like how much hotter it is now than it was just like before this was a serious concern.
But going off of that, I actually read that was the goal,
Well,
and it's actually moving more towards 2 degrees Celsius now.
really? They're
And
trying
the
to get
goal
it
is
down to 1.5.
Yeah, the goal is to keep it under 2.
Okay.
Because 1.5, I think, was the original degree of the Paris Climate Change Agreement, or whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
And now, since we're about to pull out of that, the UN and we're all refiguring our statistics, and I believe it's 2 degrees Celsius now, because I think we already passed the 1.5 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
That's crazy. And we talked about like earlier we were talking about how like increasing temperatures is going to affect like crop yields and things like that.
Mhm.
How we can produce like we won't be able to produce the healthy food that we need, right? To actually like sustain a healthy future. So you might not even have options if we let this keep going.
We won't be able to produce meat either if we can't feed them crops, because it's too
That's true.
hot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's
So-
going to affect the economy.
Ultimately, we're just driving all of our food sources down through overproducing meat.
I don't think people have ever been good at like preventative like approaches. Like, okay, like we need to do this now so that this doesn't happen, and like 5 steps down the road, we can still eat what we want to eat, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
because it's harder to do it now than it is like when you're forced to. But
That's true.
at that point, what do we say was irreparable damage? Like just within like 10 years or
Yeah.
something like? 10 years. I think it's less than 10 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I actually read something,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure where it is in my research, but they actually took it from 10 years, and given the projections that were going on, I think it's like 15 months now until irreparable damage if we keep going along the track we are, and the projections happen as they're supposed to.
That's terrifying.
Is that based off of like world production or like?
World production.
Okay. Wow.
Given that most of world production is for the United States
Yeah.
and the UN,
Yeah.
anyways, so
Mhm.
like, I think cutting down here is a good place to start, and then kind of moving out to look at the rest of the world.
you guys think there's anything that we could be doing as like a student body, and like if we're gonna start small, right, somewhere at Penn State alone, what can we be doing to at least start something, like a movement to eat healthier and be healthier and prevent climate change as a result, you know?
No, go ahead. I'm just like kind of thinking. No, go ahead.
It's a loaded question.
It is. It's like, oh.
Maybe we can offer more of those like substitutes we talked about. Like I know a lot of places around campus or downtown have like their whole menu is actually meat, but whereas we could have more maybe like veggie burgers or the Beyond Meat, the Impossible stuff. We could try to implement more of that. We could do like seminars, kind of talking about these statistics. There are like posters you could put up on all the bulletins around campus, just stuff like that to spread the word statistics.
I think you're right. Part of me also feels like you just gotta do it. I mean, like, you can, downtown and stuff like that, I guess, like, you have, like, other companies, but Penn State dining, right, we have, like, 5 dining commons on campus, and tons of students live on campus and eat on campus. If we just stopped, like, selling so much meat, like, you saw how much chicken they just trashed at the end of the day, it's, like, terrifying. They have, like, trays and trays of chicken every day, for every meal, probably.
Yeah.
But, you know, what they make, like, burgers, chicken, they have, like, meat on the pizzas, they have tons of like fish and all that other stuff. If we just like advocated for them to reduce that quantity, that could be a start.
Yeah, the actual like source, I feel like
Yeah.
is really important because I don't order meat like
Yeah.
at that many restaurants. Like I
Uh-huh.
always substitute it for something else,
Uh-huh.
but they're still making all that meat,
Right.
and they're still gonna throw it away at the end of the night. So even though
Yeah.
I'm not eating it,
yeah.
like it's still getting thrown away.
If you think about it from like a business perspective, the less we demand it, like the less they're
Yeah.
gonna buy it,
That's
right?
true.
Yeah, but like then it's like, how are we gonna reduce that demand?
So,
Because like especially in college students, like, okay, we're in our 20s,
Uh-huh.
like we're so used to eating meat, we love meat, we desire it.
Mhm.
So how do you kind of like get someone? Because people are stubborn, like they don't like change. At least
Yeah.
most people don't like change. Like they
Yeah.
like their diet how it is. So how do you really get them to like convert?
I'm thinking about it like, where like what comes first, right? Like is it us or like the corporations, right? And I feel like if I was in the dining hall and they didn't have any chicken left, like there's like an empty tray, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna stand there and wait for chicken to come out. Like I'm
Yeah.
just gonna go and get some food,
Get something else.
and
yeah,
it's probably healthier
substitute
food.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then maybe
Yeah.
you just get
Yeah.
used to like a routine, like
Yeah.
a food routine, and then you just kind of
Yeah. And going on.
exile it from your diet, I guess.
And with routine, like we all live on campus first year at Penn State.
Yeah.
Right? If they set up a sort of like standard, right? Like, coming into Penn State, we live for a year, and there's a moderate portion of meat, mostly healthy food, like a wide variety of it. When we do move off campus, I think it's 50% of students move off campus every year.
Yeah.
We're already used to a certain kind of lifestyle,
Yeah.
and demands are gonna change. So downtown's gonna have to change,
Yeah.
and after 4 years, we will have adopted a healthier lifestyle.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That is very true.
Isn't that cool? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might just be a solution.
Yeah.
I also know that when you cut back on meat and you eat less of it, when you
Uh-huh.
start eating it again, you actually get really sick, which kind of
Yeah.
causes an aversion to it.
That's
as
true.
well.
I've heard that people who are on
Okay.
entirely plant-based diets, like, they can't eat meat even if they wanted to. It'd like make them sick. Yeah.
Wow.
Like their body develops like an allergic reaction to it.
I know I went to a wedding a couple weeks ago,
Uh-huh.
and I haven't eaten beef or pork in 5 years,
Uh-huh.
and I ate hash browns that were fried in like pork fat or something, and I got so sick. Like it
Oh,
didn't
wow.
even have the meat in it, but I got so
Oh,
sick.
wow.
It was awful.
Yeah.
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 What do you guys think we could do with the land? Like if we do cut down on meat consumption and livestock farming, what do you think we can do with the land that like has a more positive impact than what we're doing now?
Petting zoos. Yeah, for sure. Reverse petting zoos. Have you ever seen The Office?
Yeah.
No.
Reverse petting zoo. It's so here, I'll explain the concept to you, right? I have to be wearing a tuxedo when I do this, but
Yeah.
it's basically where you go to a zoo and the animals they pet you.
Pet you. I was kind of thinking that's where it was going.
But yeah, I'm thinking honestly. I read that 40% of all of our agriculture land, like base, right, can only be used to raise livestock, which sucks. But that's
Yeah.
a huge percentage of our land, and so either we don't do anything with it, or we raise animals. And raising animals, like specifically cows and sheep and goats, is bad for us. So why don't we raise other animals, like llamas?
Like bunnies.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or puppies.
Puppies, yes.
See, that's the problem. That's
On
the
our
solution
land.
to all of our problems, everybody.
40% of our
Puppies
land.
everywhere.
40% of our land occupied by puppies.
Wow.
Do you guys think we could use it to maybe save more of like endangered species if that's the case?
That's cool too.
Such a good
That's cool
idea,
too.
yeah. Wow. We could change the world, guys.
Wow. This is we're coming with some like big ideas here. This is
Oh my gosh.
puppies, endangered species, and reverse pregnancies.
Wow.
Let's do it. I think we got a good thing going.
Yeah. And we are an agriculture-based institution.
Exactly.
Right? If we were going to start anything, it would start here as a
Exactly.
pilot, phase it out to other colleges, state
That's
colleges,
true.
Big Ten, and then lead this, just the four of us. We got
The four of us.
Yeah. Get that,
Oh,
2
wow.
degrees Celsius down to 1.5, and then the
Oh.
world, yeah.
Wow.
All right,
That would be
that's cool.
amazing.
Do you guys want to like kind of wrap up and hit some of the main points and like
Yeah.
figure out where to move
Yeah.
forward? All right. What I said earlier was like kind of the first thing we touched up on was how animals we determined animal diets are the ones that are contributing to like climate change, right?
Mhm.
The U.S. diet, how we want to shift to a more plant-based diet to mitigate that. We talked a little bit about waste reduction, but anything else? What do you guys? I know I'm forgetting a few points, but
We covered a lot of statistics and on like how beef and lamb was the worst
yeah.
that we're raising, but they're also kind of the most that we're raising.
Yeah.
As well.
Also, we talked about alternative meats, so like either like meat that plants that raising plants and producing them in a way that tastes like meat, or just in vitro production of meat.
We talked about taxation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
We talked about taxation. We'll take note of all this when we go back into the video, but reducing land space, addressing that space to something that might be more worthwhile.
We talked a little bit about health effects of eating a lot of beef.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the stigmas associated with certain diets.
Yeah,
Mhm.
veganism and things like that,
Yeah.
and how we can correct that early in education.
Yeah, and like gender perspectives
Uh-huh.
to a plant-based diet or any type of healthy diet.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I know the last few things that we talked about, and there might be points in between that we'll come back to, but like starting at like starting somewhere, right, and maybe being higher ed and adjusting like the diet that schools and maybe even companies that have like cafes and things like that, starting there, and setting like a standard for people to then go into the real world and have that same level of demand, right? So that
Yeah.
people are forced to change.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good thing too, because in the future, if we start it here now,
Mhm.
people will go have families and they'll raise their families that way.
Mhm.
Exactly.
So it'll just kind of like keep going down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think part of it has to be political though. Like there needs to be enough support for like a political bill that says, okay, like colleges have to maintain this bar, right? And if all colleges because we're a federally funded university, we'd have to maintain that. Private institutions, maybe not. But if we started with public, that's kind of where it has to start. So education and I think diet are very closely related.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to stop.
I think so.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Okay. All right. All right, and scene. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
I think it was too.